Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Liz and this is Let's Get Lizical, where we do everything card making. And today we're making a birthday card for my sister. As of this going up, it would have been like her birthday the week before. But I just wanted to show another card doing similar techniques that we've done in the past. And super fun. So I have this digital stamp from Sweet November Stamps. I'll link it down in the description below. I think it's Carrie and Neo or something like that are the names of the characters. I think when you buy the set, you get them together and then you get them separate. So you can use just the mermaid or just the dolphin. I decided to do both. I've done my sister a few cards. I think the very first birthday card I made her was a mermaid with the Mermazing set from MFT. I made her a dolphin one a few years after that. And now we're just going to combine them and make them into one card. So for the background, I'm going to use a standard 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card. And we're going to do it kind of like MFT style. I've seen this style quite a few times on their socials, where they just add like a strip of color and then either stamp within that with the sentiment below it, or kind of have the images fall out of that. So I'm going to use that because I want to kind of ground them in a blue mixtured background to mimic water. Probably use those clear drops that I used last week. Maybe I'll use the iridescent ones. They look like soapy bubbles to me, so I usually use those for like more nautical themed cards. And then again, I'm just going to use like a strip. So I'm going to cut this probably down to size, or I might just ink up a whole panel and just cut out whatever section looks best actually. But we're going to do the tin foil and watercolor technique again and see how that works on a bigger panel. And then maybe instead of doing color kind of all over the place like we did last time, maybe I'll try to do an ombre of color. So we'll grab my sheet. So this is my swatch card. I don't have them labeled, so I kind of just guess when I get to the colors. I think blue's in the middle section here. Yeah, so it looks like teal and then blue. So I think this starts here. And then, so I want 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 3 and 5. 3 and 5. So we'll try those two colors and see how it goes. Maybe I'll add in a lighter blue as well. But anyway, I will move over to voiceover and you guys can watch me color and assemble this card. Hey guys, so voiceover Liz here. So what we're gonna do is do a full panel of the ink blending. I was looking for a little bit more of an ombre look and the texture from the tin foil, which is what we did a few weeks ago. We did a little less coverage in that video, and I did, very light, very little ink blending in different colors. And this time I was looking for a bit more of a full panel coverage background. So I had to do this in a couple of layers, which I also had to do the last time too, but this time I added like a ton of water to it, and it still doesn't quite bead up the way it does on my laminated sheet of white paper that I generally use for ink smooshing. Like you can see it pools up here at the bottom, but that's because the tin foil's kind of a little bit more in like a bowl kind of shape there with the divots. So it did kind of pool up a little bit more, and I was trying to splatter some darker color on there just for a little bit more added texture, but because the panel was still damp, it was just kind of like blending into the background. So I would make sure that you let your panel air dry or hit it with your heat tool and dry it quickly if you're impatient. I was just gonna let it dry while I was coloring anyway. So it probably dried for like about 20 minutes. It was still a little damp when I put it on the card, so I'd probably do like maybe half an hour to an hour to let it air dry. You could just feel your paper and see if it's there. But I decided to just like leave it as is, and when I put the panel on the card later, I just added some like controlled splatter to it with an alcohol marker just for a little bit of added texture in the background and a little bit more of like a bubbly look. And then for the images, I'm just coloring with, you know, my standard alcohol markers. I have a mixture of various brands, which I always just kind of list in the description. I just say various alcohol markers because I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 different brands of alcohol markers that I've been using over the years. I started off with Prismacolors when I was in college, because that was, you know, a little bit cheaper than the Copic markers. I don't think Prismacolor does it anymore, or they don't sell open stock and they just sell sets, I believe. I'm pretty sure the art store here, Curry's, which I haven't been to in years, stopped selling them individually open stock at one point. I do have a few Copic markers, but I haven't made the move to the Olo markers because I love the way that they're, you know, they're half barrels, but they can be attached to a full marker, and you can have 2 shades on one full marker if you buy the connectors for them. So I've kind of, you know, ordered like a lighter and then a darker shade and then connected those, so then I now have them back to back ready to go. And there's just a lot more ink in these barrels because they're not felt on the inside, which is what most markers are. They're felt on the inside that they fill up with ink and then it holds the ink. These ones are loose ink in barrels. Sometimes I have a little bit of problem with the way that the ink comes out of the barrel and through the tip, and it does explode a little bit, but I just have maybe 2 of the markers that I have that do that. I don't think I've had problems with all of them, and it also could be like me just gripping it a little bit too hard sometimes. When you're doing like smaller areas, it's very hard not to grip your marker a little bit harder and just like try to get the very like slightest touch to those areas, because of the alcohol markers, they bleed a little bit when you put them on the cardstock, so you have to be very light-handed in smaller areas so that it fills it without, you know, going outside of the lines, especially if you have images that are finer lines like this one. I did have a few areas, especially with reds, here on this image, where I had to, you know, use my colorless blender to kind of push the color out because it did bleed a little bit into another section. But other than that, it's pretty easy. And then if you do go outside the lines, you can just use a white gel pen to kind of use it as like a whiteout. So I do really like this image. It's very cute. I decided to go with, you know, classic Little Mermaid colors. And then in order to add a little bit of highlight to her tail, I added white and glitter dots to it just to give it a little bit more of that fishy scales like look to it. And then her fins, I kind of just like went over the lines a little bit, like just quickly. I didn't make it sure it was neat or anything, but just to give it a little bit of extra shimmer there. And then I'm just kind of adding cute like little highlights to her hair here and there. I didn't go crazy with them, and I just kind of did like little quick dash lines here and there for highlighting. And then I will take this over to my scan and cut it out. The one thing with the scan and cut is obviously it doesn't cut out any like middle areas, so I wish I had also gone through and cut out the area between her and the dolphin just with like an X-Acto knife, but sometimes it's not always the cleanest job, and I just decided to leave it because I would have liked the background to show up a little bit more in those areas. If I had done like a solid section there instead of this blended background, then it would be easier for me just to use the marker to fill in that space, but because there was so much texture in it, I didn't want to try to mimic that because it might just mess up the image, and it took me like 20 minutes I think at least to color, so I didn't want to have to color that again. But anyway, this is pretty much like a quick and simple card, super easy to put together. I love this layout. You can do this with any theme. Again, I see this quite a bit on MFT's channel where they do this style of card, and it's a good way to fill up the space with not filling it up completely. And if you're into that white space like I am, then this is a good way to help fill it out but keep it simple.
You could do this with patterned papers. You can ink blend different panels with your inks instead of doing it with the markers, and like pretty much anything. And then I like the way that the images fall outside of that box and break that barrier, because it just adds a little bit more interest. And then for the sentiment, I grabbed the sentiment from, I think this one's called Seize the Day or something. I'll link it down in the description below, but it's from Simon Says Stamp. And I just decided to use this one because it's available, or it should still be available anyway. But my other mermaid set is from MFT and it's no longer available, so I used this one instead. I have a couple of mermaid sets. I'm into, you know, mermaids, cats, dragons. Those are like probably one of my most prominent stamp sets for theme anyway. And fish, because I like underwater I'm not into fish as pets because they're boring to me. I have cats, but I like doing fishy themed cards, and I will have some patterned paper packs and sentiment sets coming out with those for digital releases at some point this summer, which I'm excited about. But yeah, so I also added in some of these iridescent clear pearls that kind of look like soapy bubbles into the background, just add a little bit more of that underwater scene feel. And that was the end of this card. So anyway, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment down below, and let me know your thoughts. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe because I'd love to have you here. And until next time, thanks guys, bye.